After hammering out a deal to suspend the U.S. debt limit and avert a default disaster, we have a rarity in Washington: compromise, with leadership in both parties declaring victory. But they, like us, are already looking ahead. The debt deal pushes one political drama down the road, but another is heating up fast, with more Republicans entering the 2024 presidential ring. The future of both the legislative and executive branches is the focus of our weekend briefing. Eric Wasson is a congressional reporter at Bloomberg, and Aaron Haynes is a founder and editor-at-large for the 19th. Aaron Haynes, I want to ask you about the meaning of this deal. What are your takeaways as far as who outside of Washington, which Americans could be affected by this?
Well, I think there's definitely some concern among both younger voters and, frankly, people that are closer to my age that are still paying off student loan debt, because the student loan debt moratorium was one of the casualties in this debt ceiling deal compromise. That people who had had their student loans frozen during the pandemic are going to have to start repaying those loans in the next couple of months. These are people who maybe are still struggling to do that, maybe also people who were hoping for student loan debt forgiveness from this administration.
Eric, who do you think gained and lost here?
I think President Biden gains a lot with independent voters. People in these swing districts, and swing voters really like deal making. There was some polling that came out before the deal that said, 60%, this was a CNN poll, wanted to see spending cuts attached. As she mentioned, there are going to be some people, both student debt, holders, and those who receive food stamps. There is going to be an expansion of some work requirements for those in the 50 to 55 year old range, and more paperwork requirements that, quite frankly, could make it harder for them to find food. But overall, it's a spending freeze, and it's full of more holes in Swiss cheese. And I think we saw right before the Senate acted that there's a big bipartisan push to do what's called an emergency spending bill to shoehorn and backdoor a lot of spending, both for Ukraine and for things on the domestic side that just could make these caps pretty meaningless pretty quickly.
Now, also during this week, Aaron, of course, Ron DeSantis became official a candidate for president. We've been waiting maybe since he ran for governor for that announcement. But he has a very uphill climb, and maybe does it everyone else in the Republican primary field. What is the path here for someone other than Donald Trump?
Former Vice President Mike Pence and Chris Christie expected to be announcing imminently. Look, I think, after the former President Trump defining DeSantis for months, even before he became an official candidate, you now have DeSantis in this official candidacy role attempting to define himself, and even going from, I think, the culture warrior that a lot of people recognize him as somebody who maybe is willing to take on former President Trump, which a lot of voters who might be looking for an alternative to Donald Trump were wondering whether he would do and whether he could do that successfully. And so you see him on the campaign trail this week bringing up the issue of term limits and really questioning Donald Trump's assertion that he doesn't need 8 years in office. So how that's going to play out with voters, DeSantis is clearly spending a lot of time in Iowa. We're going to see a lot more of the candidates in Iowa, even through this weekend, and so voters are going to have a chance to begin to get to know them. But again, we're still 520 plus days away from Election Day, so a lot of time for all of these candidates to attempt to distinguish themselves and maybe, knock Trump off of his front-runner campaign pedestal that he at least seems to be pretty secure in holding for now.
Eric, a lot of echo that we've heard in the halls of the Capitol the past couple of weeks. What arguments are you hearing shape up for 2024?
Well, I think this is going to be a big impact on House races of this deal. I think, Kevin McCarthy's future is very much in doubt. We'll see if he can hold on to the speakership. But overall, I think the deal benefits the swing district moderate Republicans. It makes them look like deal makers. It could, on the other hand, hurt McCarthy's ability to raise big dollars from donors.
How soon do you think Speaker McCarthy could be in trouble?
I think we could see it as soon as the coming week, that they could try to bring a motion to oust him from the speakership. I would suspect that would fail for several reasons, but there are a group of Democrats who are willing to bail out the speaker on that vote. It would be a very strange situation. We haven't really seen this kind of coalition, no confidence vote in U.S. politics, and it remains to be seen if that would hurt McCarthy politically. But I think he's got a backstop there where he's willing to call the bluff, and so far he is. He's basically saying, bring it on, try tried to oust me.
This was major news this week on both these fronts, but yet I did not feel the electricity in any of this. I think the American public is exhausted. Maybe just I'm exhausted. But how would you both, in just a few words, assess the mood of the electorate right now?
I feel like fiscal issues aren't as prominent as they were. I covered the 2011 debt ceiling crisis, where it was a big deal. It was very a big issue among voters, and I think cultural issues right now for Republican voters. Abortion on both sides is a big issue. There's a lot of things about teaching racism in classes. I think that the voters are really not focused on the budget. Budget's always been a boring issue, but I just that the energy lacked there, and that perhaps that allowed McCarthy to make a deal.
Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably is a little bit of the been there, done that feeling on the debt ceiling. Maybe that's why there is kind of a lack of enthusiasm or interest around this issue. Also, maybe a lack of understanding about how this debt ceiling issue is not just a Wall Street problem, but also a problem for everyday Americans on Main Street. What is the on the ground reality for them? Maybe that connection was not clear enough, and so didn't really give them a reason to understand kind of what does this mean for me. Again, we're still over 500 days away from Election Day. Not all voters are as locked into this as those of us who get paid to pay attention to this kind of thing for a living. And so I think, as the Republican primary field begins to come more and more into focus, as the primary season, these debates, the primary elections begin to get underway, I think you'll see voters begin to pay more attention, and we'll see that they actually are quite engaged and interested in the outcome for 2024.
Eric Wasson and Aaron Haynes, thanks to both of you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.